all participants, all faculty members, and good morning to HOD sir, HOD ma'am, and Mugre sir, and resource person. I will hand over to Nandekar madam to introduce this guest.
Madam is not audible. Someone sir, unmute her. She is muted.
We can start actually without introduction if it is not going to.
So she is online, sir. Just bear with us.
Okay, because yesterday.
Madam.
Someone is muting me again, ma'am. So there is some confusion over here.
No, you carry on. No, you are unmuted. Go on.
A very good morning to one and all, and on the 5th day of FFTP. I hope everyone is healthy and safe at home. I would like to welcome our speaker, Dr. Nandkishore Dhave sir, who is with us from yesterday. He has covered the basics of SCADA and industrial internet affairs in his last session. We are eagerly looking forward to today's session with you. Without taking more time, I hope everyone will enjoy the session and over to you, sir. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dandekar ma'am, and good morning everyone. I hope you are the same audience as yesterday, and you probably tried to Google the videos that I showed you yesterday, the one where the hell is Matt and the Ale from Sadhguru, and probably you got a chance to do some dancing and exercise and try to be happy. So even if not, don't worry, you can buy your time and you can start it some other time, right? So welcome everyone, and today's session, as per the flyer that was distributed, it mentions a lot of points. So I don't know if I will be able to cover everything, but I will try my best to cover things which are in relation to those points. Okay, so IoT drivers, connections, communication, microprocessor, microcontroller, dedicated microcontroller, and all those things. We can actually look into it. So in today's talk, the outline of my talk, I will actually present it before. Let me actually go to the cover slide. So again, I am Dr. Nandkishore Dhave and the team. As I mentioned, I always put a team because many contents from my slide are kind of the data is coming from either my students or my colleagues or my collaborators from either PVPIT or from McGill or from any other institute across the globe. So I usually always like to put it as team, and I am the in charge of R&D cell at PVPIT, as well as I am the associate professor. I'm not in electrical engineering, so yesterday they were mentioning that if I was in electrical, so I'm in instrumentation engineering, and I also teach for MTech electrical engineering as well at PVPIT. Apart from these duties, I am also the vice president for the Institutions Innovation Council for PVPIT Budgao, and I'm also the innovation ambassador recognized by Government of India for the Western region, and I'm also like the IP cell in charge. So I am actually participating in many roles at PVPIT Budgao because I like all of that to have on my CVs. So I'm presenting today via web to Department of Electrical Engineering, Kolhapur Institute of Technology, again Kolhapur, Maharashtra, India, from PVPIT Budgao, Sangli, Maharashtra. Obviously, because of the lockdown situation, I am also doing it from home. And today's lecture, I want to try to cover, like, in short, hands-on SCADA and IoT again. Okay, so as per the flyer, I think this is the summary: hands-on SCADA and IoT. Okay, so let me start today's session. Again, I will just highlight this, the syllabus. So the SCADA component and the IoT component has always been, part of instrumentation engineering branch, and recently actually IoT was added. It is not a compulsory core course, but it is an elective course which can be opted or exempted according to the student requirements. And the same syllabus probably might be in the electrical department as well. We are affiliated to DBATU, so I don't know what is your status there. You might be affiliated to DBATU or probably Shivaji University, but probably I have heard that you're autonomous, so you can decide what syllabus you want to have, right? So you can go through the syllabus from the DBATU and see what you can adapt in electrical engineering department. So the topic that I was trying to cover is same, SCADA and IoT. Okay, so today what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some examples of SCADA. I'm going to show you some examples of IoT. Okay, and in terms of IoT, I'm going to show you some examples of hardware for IoT. I'm going to show you some examples of software for IoT, and I'm going to show you some examples of cloud computing for IoT. Not cloud computing, but cloud storage at least for IoT. And in terms of SCADA, even though the syllabus is trying to cover something related to PLCs, so I am actually not showing a PLC for different reasons, because I wanted to show that PLC is not the only device that can be used for data acquisition and control, or even for SCADA. There are other devices as well, and among them there is one from a well-known brand called as National Instruments. They have different data acquisition hardwares. They can be accessed using USB or using the communication slots, the buses that are available in the machines, like the computer machines. And they also have the most beautiful programming language, the most very, I would call it like, it is like kind of a rapid prototyping programming language. Okay, it is a graphical programming language which was invented again by the founders of NI, the co-founders of NI, and it has a great history. If you want to actually go into that eventually, I don't think if I will cover it, but this company, National Instruments Incorporate, also have a series of products, including they can be used for developing our own SCADA. Okay, so I'm going to try to cover that. And now I also wanted to mention that my expertise, I'm a multidisciplinary person, because being in instrumentation engineering, so I worked for I can take some names, like I worked for Honeywell Aerospace. I worked on the aircraft 350, from Airbus, which is a plastic composite aircraft. I worked for their environmental control system for their cabin, the cabin where actually we sit when we are traveling using a aeroplane service. I worked for MDA. MDA is a company which is the first company to send the robotic arm in space. So there is an international space station in the space, and in that space station there is a Canada arm. It is called as a Canada arm. It is a big robotic manipulator which is controlled from the ground into the space, and that is used for different operations that actually take in the space. Okay, so I work for that company. That company is the one which also launches a lot of payloads via satellites. They design a lot of antennas, and I work for them. It is called as Donald and D. Whittler company. Now it is actually probably it is took over by another company. I've worked for Canada Rail. I'm going to try to show one example again for that. So CP Rail is like, Canadian Pacific Rail. It is actually there are only two private companies related to rail in Canada, and they are CP Rail and CM
Excuse me, sir.
Rail. Yes.
Sir, are you showing the pictures now? Because we are able to see only first slide.
Yes. No. I'm going to show. So I'm just giving some background. So what I'm going to show, I'm just
Okay.
giving some background. So there is only one slide that I'm showing right now. Example of SCADA, right?
Yes.
And then I have also worked for I was in McGill University. McGill University is having world ranking of, that time when I joined, it was having a global ranking of 12th. They have 14 Nobel laureates. Okay, like Sir Rutherford, which we know, who is actually father of nuclear physics, was alumni of McGill. Like, he was a faculty at McGill. So the one who discovered the CCD camera, the couple discharge camera, the sensor, he's also from McGill. So I am proud of McGill alumni. McGill is in Canada. I have been in Concordia University as well, which is related to aerospace engineering. It is a big university related to aerospace. So I just wanted to mention that. So that is where I have been through from my entire career, and I have also completed my PhD and my postdoctoral studies. Okay, so in terms of SCADA, so before I show something, so I actually developed a system. So I am more into like measurement instrumentation. So measurement instrumentation is something like data acquisition. You collect data, and then you actually use that data to describe some variables, to describe the quantity and the quality of the variables, or the process parameters, what we call. It can be also related to electrical engineering, but it is more related to process manufacturing. Okay, so I developed a prototype which is soil analysis apparatus. So basically it is a lab in the field. It looks like a Mars rover, the Mars rover like Curiosity, which was sent on NASA. So I actually developed a system which was for Earth, not actually Mars, and for agriculture, and for for planet Earth, and for helping to produce food and oxygen. Okay, so that is actually my kind of area since since last 10 years. And this is my US patent, which is granted. We are actually looking to commercialize it. So I just want to show this video in brief, and then we can actually start moving ahead. So this video doesn't have any audio. What you will see is it is actually an equipment which has a robotic arm, and what it does, it actually digs through the soil. So it is like a lathe machine, it is like a milling machine, and it is operated using DC power. So the battery power that comes from the vehicle, is originally coming from the alternator, which is hooked up to the diesel engine of the vehicle. And that battery is providing 12 volts, and there is a lot of current. So I have a very powerful motor which is used to dig through the soil. Unfortunately, the video is not streaming very efficiently. I don't know what is the reason. Maybe there is a delay in the connection or something. And so what this equipment is, it cuts through the soil. It reaches the depth where we sow a seed, and there we insert a sensor. So here we are inserting a potentiometric sensor. We can go with a camera, we can go with spectroscopy, we can go with different mechanical sensors as well. So we are reaching the zone where we sow a seed, and we are monitoring the environment there. And that process is completely automated, means you just click a button and then it will start doing the operation. So you drive the vehicle to different locations in the field, and then you start collecting measurements, and eventually you can map the field with different soil properties, and this is called as on the spot soil analyzer. So it is something that can be used to replace the conventional laboratories. So this is an analytical instrument with a robotic platform, with lots of instrumentation that is actually going on, and these are the sensors. Okay, this is the actuator, and it can also be rinsed, because after every measurement the sensors are contaminated with the previous measurement or with the current measurement, and they need to be cleaned properly before we go for the next measurement. Okay, so this is a prototype. We had a big team, it's not my alone work. Okay, so this was one of the objective of my PhD studies. So because we are doing a destructive testing, means we are damaging the soil, we are actually damaging the surface of the soil. So we also have a mechanism to kind of fix it. So what we have some kind of a container, which also we can call it like like an enclosure. So when it digs the soil, it actually fills it in that, and then what you do, you just actually pull your vehicle and then you cover it again. So the farmers, they don't feel actually that, oh, this person is damaging my soil, right? So both of these operations are taking place. And now let me go to the slide. So this is my prototype. So it is called the OSA, on the spot soil analyzer. It consists of a frame that goes inside the hitch of the vehicle. So in vehicles in North America, they usually have a hitch, which is a square tube, a square pipe, actually not a tube, but we can call it also as a tube, but it is a square in dimension, and that actually can be inserted. So this complete assembly can be taken away, right? So you can attach it, you can detach it. Now this is consisting of two linear motors and one rotating motor. All are DC, all are powered DC. 12 volt, they can take up to 20 amperes. Okay, they are very powerful motors, and the operation is like to swivel this the cutter blade assembly, so that it kind of starts cutting to the ground. Doesn't matter if there is grass or if there is corn or if there is any kind of a stuff that is coming out of the soil, it will still cut through it. And then eventually the blades, because they have two cutting blades, so when it stops at that position, it has to make sure that the blades are like aligned horizontally to the ground. So then I can insert the sensor through that. And this is very tricky, because if those blades are not actually aligned properly, then I cannot insert the sensor, and the operation that we did was going to get a waste. It will waste the energy that we did use for it. And also the sensor, like when we are using a sensor to measure something in soil, the interface is very important. If the soil sensor is not in proper contact with the soil micro solution, then the readings are not going to come properly. So this project, it took me like around 3 years to completely like finish it perfectly. Especially in Canada, we do this testing when in the spring or in the fall, because we can only do it when there is nothing grown on the field. And usually in the fall, in the spring, there is a lot of water, and in the fall there is also a lot of water, and there is a lot of actually cold weather. So this equipment has to work in that cold weather at 99 to 95 greater than that percent of humidity. The temperatures can be near to freezing, like from 0 degrees to around 10 degrees Celsius. Okay, so we work in that kind of environment. So this one is controlled using a computer that has LabVIEW installed on it, and the hardware that we are using is am I audible? Because here it's showing I have network problems. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes. So this has a laptop. This has these 3 motors that can take up to 20 amperes. So the laptop is usually having 65 to 125 watt adapters. And then it also has a pumping mechanism to sprinkle the water and to clean the electrodes. So in together at at a time, usually only one motor is operating. Sometimes maximum 2 motors are operating, and the laptop is operating. So technically it can drive up to like 60 amps of current. Okay, so 60 amps of current is coming from the battery that is actually hooked up to the alternator of the vehicle. The vehicle is actually turned on, it is continuously running, so the alternator is running and the battery is being charged, but the rate at which the battery is being charged is like, you know, lesser than the rate at which we are using the power. So that's why, for that reason, what we had installed two batteries. So one battery which is you know, already coming with the vehicle, but then we added another battery for storage, so that we can have this operation, you know, done for a greater time of extent, right? So all of this also has a GPS, you know, a very accurate GPS, like, you know, the accuracy can be like around in centimeters. These are very expensive actually, like, you know, instruments, and then it is all controlled using relays, using, you know, PWM controllers, like, you know, speed controllers, and then we also have this National Instruments data acquisition card. Okay, so all of that is you know, you also need to do a lot of programming. I will actually show that eventually. So this is like a vehicle. If you actually go right now to visit NASA's website and you look into, like, you know, Perseverance, which is the latest rover that was actually deployed on planet Mars by NASA, or if you go back to 2012 Curiosity, when it was actually deployed on Mars. So during that time, like, you know, when when NASA was deploying Curiosity, I was actually, like, you know, working on this vehicle, and I am proud to say that I was the first one to do something like this in the globe. Okay, so let me now show you, like, you know, the electronics. Unfortunately, I don't have good pictures because they are stored somewhere else. So this is actually the, you know, the main, you know, the control. So instead of having a PLC, what I had is I had a National Instruments data acquisition card, which is connected to the laptop via USB, and then on the data acquisition card, what I have inputs like analog inputs, I have outputs like analog outputs, I have digital inputs, I have digital outputs. So I have a lot of, you know, opportunities to interface my DAQ card or my hardware with the external world, right? So the processes. So in that robot, what I have, you know, I have 3 motors which I need to control the speed, as well as I need to actually, like, you know, control the position, you know, the speed and position, and then I also have the motor which is driving the pump to spray some liquid, and then I'm also having a lot of sensors which are actually going to get interface with the soil, and there is a lot of noise, there is a lot of, you know, because of electromagnetic you know, noise that is generated by the vehicle. So these signals, they have to be, like, you know, very taken care in terms of insulation and stuff, and all of that, you know, all of that was hardwired using this kind of, you know, a crude actually box. Eventually we build a good box, and you know, I can eventually show. There are some things which are confidential, so we are not allowed to show yet, because this is just not my work. It is actually the, you know, the IP of McGill University, Canada. So I'm just trying to show whatever I can show, and so this is how it works, right? So the motors are driven using the relays. The relays are driven using the relay drivers. The motors can be operated in clockwise or anti-clockwise, or positive and negative directions, and they can also be, their speeds can also be controlled, like, you know, the travel speed for the linear actuators as well as the RPM of the cutter blade. So all of that can be controlled through control signals, and what I also did was, like, you know, I also have a, you know, a dedicated controller. So I used an Arduino to control the cutter motor, and then that Arduino was, like, you know, supervised by the LabVIEW, which is actually the National Instruments. So we had a similar, actually, like, you know, a concept which we see in industries. So you have a supervisor, you have actually a dedicated controller, and then they actually communicate with each other, and then they actually exchange information, and then they take care of everything, right? So similar thing, you know, so this is actually the pump that sits on the back of the vehicle. So the one that I showed you yesterday, like, you know, the schematic of SCADA. So a SCADA, it had actually a water tank, it had a pressure gauge, it had a valve to release. So all of that, exactly the same thing, I have it here mounted on the vehicle. So I like to work on, you know, mobile instrumentation. So I'm an expert in mobile instrumentation in the field, right? Instrumentation in situ. So those are actually my expertise. I do a lot of work in that. So this is actually the SCADA, right? The SCADA, that is kind of integrated part of LabVIEW. So LabVIEW has a front end and it has a back end. The front end is looking like exactly like some kind of display. These days we call it as a dashboard. Like if you go on mobile phones, smartphones, now they have a dashboard. So this is like a dashboard, right? Like a vehicle also has a dashboard. The aircraft has a dashboard. The rail, the rail driver actually has a dashboard. So similarly in our field, instrumentation and control, automation, we also have this dashboard. So this is actually the display. Now what I have in this is I want to actually explain eventually. So if you look into this, you know, so my blade is actually cutting through. So I always need to know the status of my blade. You know, is it actually like, you know, what is the how many rotations it is actually taking? What is the speed? You know, what is the position? Is it aligned horizontally to the ground or is it now vertical to the ground? Okay. So all of that is taken care by Arduino dedicated controller, and that status is actually been sent to LabVIEW using serial actually port. So communication is done using serial or RS-232, whatever we can say. Then what I also have is I have this, you know, event indicator. So my robotic arm, first what I do a start. Then I start my cutter. Then I start rotating the cutter at a super high speed. The cutter is mounted on a transportation platform. So the transportation has two status, either down or up. So I see that, okay, my transportation is down. Then once it reaches down position, then I slow down my cutter. Then what I do, actually I deploy my sensor. Sometimes I need to spray some water if the soil is not actually moist. If it is dry, I spray some water and then I deploy my sensor. Then I start measuring activity, like, you know, the recording of the data that is actually going to come from the sensor. In our case, we had 2 pH sensors and 1 nitrate sensor. Then we wait for 1 minute, 2 minutes, that will actually show on the graph. Then after we are sure, we also do some statistical analysis on the data. We apply some filters and we see, okay, now is it enough for recording? Are we done? Can we stop the recording? So that decision is made. Then the measurement activity will stop. Then the deploy sensor will actually retract back. Then the transportation mode will go up. Then the rinsing mode will start. The rinsing will actually happen of the sensors. Then we call it as a task finish. Then we also kill the cutter. We want to make sure that the cutter by some accidentally it doesn't operate. So the cutter is very dangerous. It is operating at a very high speed. It can cut through anything, so if anyone personal actually hand or someone can get caught, then it can be a very scary event that can happen. So all of that, this is actually happening on the vehicle itself. Okay, so that's it. So this is SCADA. What is happening on the vehicle, we can see it on the screen. Okay, so this can be put in front of the driver of the vehicle and that can be actually taken care autonomously, so one driver, he just drives the vehicle, he stops wherever he's needed, he presses the button, the robotic actually platform will start, the instrumentation will happen, the measurement will happen, the rinsing of the electrode will happen, we get good quality data and we start moving. Okay, so something like this is actually possible. We have did it, we have tried it. All is on DC power. Okay, DC power, so electric. So we are obviously using diesel engine because the vehicle that we have to use it has to be an all-terrain vehicle. The agriculture fields or all-terrain, they can actually have different slopes, they can have different actually variations in their heights and depths, and the soil conditions can be from very fluffy to actually super actually hard. So for that terrain, the vehicle has to manage to operate. So that's why all-terrain vehicles, maybe these days there are actually vehicles which are coming with electrical power, but it can be rare. You need to have a something which is actually a diesel engine. So that's why we are using a diesel engine vehicle, and that's it. So let me see if I can open my PhD thesis for a moment, okay? And I was actually sharing it before. Oh yeah. So let me just check if I can share this. Oh yeah, it's here. So share content, and then my PDF is going to pop up. Okay, so now you can see, right, my PDF. Am I audible? I don't hear anything from anyone.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay.
Yes,
So in my PhD there is a lot of actually programming. As I said, I'm expert in LabVIEW, I'm expert in MATLAB. I did a lot of work in machine learning, I did a lot of work in artificial intelligence, a lot of work in instrumentation, data acquisition, control, as well as SCADA. So there is a lot of code that actually we have to add as an appendix to my PhD thesis as the norms there. And so this is actually the Arduino program, Arduino. Why Arduino? I'll tell you. Arduino is actually a rapid prototyping tool. So you have some idea in your mind, you implement it very quickly. If you go with something like AVR, or if you go with microchip like PIC microcontrollers, then you need to actually deal with compilers. If you want to work with C programming, or you actually go with assembly, then you actually struggle with all that. So instead we can just test. We are doing a prototyping. So prototyping doesn't matter. You go with Arduino. It is actually the most open source actually technology, reliable technology that exists. So the programming is very similar to C, and it is open. You don't need to actually worry about compilers or anything. So this is actually the Arduino. So this is the the dedicated field control. The dedicated field control is achieved by Arduino, and then the supervisory control that we see, this is actually done using LabVIEW. So LabVIEW is a graphical programming interface. We just drag and drop functions in form of blocks. So if you have tried actually Simulink, you are from electrical engineering department, so I'm pretty sure that many of you or most of you have worked with Simulink. You have tried to simulate some kind of hardware, some kind of a control system in Simulink. So same like the way we have Simulink, we have some kind of a block, we have some nodes where we can connect different inputs, and we can connect different outputs, and you can actually configure the inputs, you can configure the outputs, you can also configure the nodes, and then you can attach it to some source or sink and all that features. Similarly, like that, we have LabVIEW. You must be having LabVIEW probably in your institute as well. I'm not very keen about your institute, but probably you already have LabVIEW. So this is what is done. So this is LabVIEW. Unfortunately, I cannot show you LabVIEW. I cannot expand it because we have a limitation with the screen. So what I can just tell you, so initially what I do, I first start my, I initialize my data acquisition card. I configure my ports, ADC, DAC, AI, DO, DI, all those ports. Then I actually what I did is, in LabVIEW you have a sequence execution. So LabVIEW, what it does, it always executes from the top right corner. Okay, it will execute until the bottom right corner. Okay, it will we can also do kind of object oriented, but what I did is a water flow model. Okay, in programming terms, you can actually follow a waterfall model. Water always falls from top to bottom, right? So same here, the programming concept, my execution is going to happen from top to bottom. So what I do, again, as I showed you before in my SCADA, so there are different events that are happening. So all those events are going to happen. After that event is completed, it will create a flag. It will actually connect with the next event task to be performed. After that task is performed, then it will actually generate a flag, and then it will tell to perform the third event, like successively the fourth event, the fifth event, the sixth event, the seventh event, and then eventually it will stop, because my operation is like a batch process. I just do it in a batch and then I stop. I have to go to another location, right? So my program is going to be executed in this way, and this is my back end. So what we saw on the front is the front end, which is like SCADA, and what we see on the back is the back end, which is the code, which is the actual code, okay, which is done in LabVIEW. And it is very like this program, I could write it in one day. You know, so once I have my hardware ready, once I know all the configuration parameters that I need to actually achieve, once I know what should be the flow chart or like the processes, then I can program that in one day. Maybe like few hours. There are actually few people who can do it in few hours. So this is the beauty of LabVIEW. If you go with some other programming language, oh, it will be a nightmare. You might take like months. I have actually worked for my masters on C programming language for again doing something similar, and it took me months to implement that. So but LabVIEW one day, Arduino again one day. So in 2 days, you're going to do it rapidly. You can prototype something very rapidly. So these are actually very interesting platforms. Okay. So again, let me just show you very quickly. So this one, if it can become big, yeah. Okay, so here was something like I took a screenshot. When the data was actually like being collected. So you see the red line, then you see the white line, you see a green line, and then you see something 0.8. okay, so these are actually the signals that are coming from the analog channels when nothing is connected, means the channels are open. Okay, there is no load, means there is no load, like no sensor load on that. So at that time what actually happens, there is a static actually voltage, and that keeps on actually going down eventually, and depending on the sampling rate, these terminologies might be a little bit challenging for you, but I don't, so let's not discuss that. So depending on what value is arriving at that channel, so that value is going to be displayed on the graph. Here the graph is actually updating every 1 second. So this is information at 1 second, and the sampling rate was 1 kilohertz. So every 1 millisecond I get a reading, and that 1 millisecond reading is actually been shown on the graph, as well as I am showing it on the the digital displays on the right of the corner. And what you see is the green one is for pH electrode, which is based on antimony. The red one is for glass electrode for pH, and the faint green one is for actually NO3, like nitrate concentration. And what we can also do is we can change different parameters from here, like wet timer, rinse timer, feed drill timer. Means I can actually change the speed of cutting. I can increase the time for actually recording my data. I can actually increase the time for rinsing of the electrodes. I can actually increase or decrease the time when I'm going to turn my pump on or off before I'm actually going to deploy the sensor. So all of this can be done supervisory, right? So supervisory control and data acquisition. So this is an example, live example that I have actually hands-on. Eventually, if some of you actually have LabVIEW, maybe we can do another session in future, like if you want some help in LabVIEW and related actually programming language. So that's actually hands-on LabVIEW. Let me just show you an example if I can find. Yeah, so the prototype that I built, was we have actually did a lot of work. So this is actually another one, pH, Veris pH sensor. It is commercialized, it was patented by my supervisor, and he commercialized it in US, and it has been actually used in many places. They also use this in Punjab Agriculture University for research purpose. I am actually working with them as well, Punjab Agriculture University, Ludhiana. And I think let me just show you some more stuff. So there are some theory, there is a lot of theory behind it. Okay, so this is actually the mechanical design which was patented. This is actually the conceptual design. So this is the data acquisition card from LabVIEW, National Instruments. It is called as USB 6216. Why I used it? Because it has BNC connectors, and this BNC connectors actually, or coaxial connectors, are very helpful when there is signal where there will be a lot of noise. Okay, so noisy signals can be connected, and that noise will actually not get affected because of the coaxial cables that we are using. So all the sensors that are connected to this are actually connected via coaxial connections, and because the frequency component and the amplitude and all those things will be taken care. And then it also has digital input. So here I have a relay driver. I'm actually driving a lot of relays. So the pump, the solenoid valve, the linear actuators, the position sensor for the motor, the actual motor which is actually connected to the cutter. Then we are going to measure pH and nitrate, so we need to also use some preamplifiers. These are actually some door switches, and this is a Toughbook. So I actually worked with a Toughbook. Toughbook is a laptop which is actually weatherproof laptop. Even if a truck will actually go over it, it will not get damaged. Okay, so that LabVIEW component was also operatable on this Toughbook. This Toughbook has its own GPS as well, and it has a place where you can insert a SIM card, and you can throw it anywhere. Even if it goes underwater, up to 30 meters, nothing will happen, it will still operate. So I've actually used those things in real time to actually complete one of the objective of my project. If you see the electrical drawings, the connection diagrams, the logical actually diagrams, and the testing, some other connection diagrams, the testing, all that you have to actually work on. Okay, so let me just stop sharing that, and then let me go to the next section. So that was something, SCADA, right? So are you getting it? So we are already we completed 40 minutes of our session, and in 40 minutes I think I showed you a lot, and we still have only 50 minutes remaining. So is it clear up to here? Can I just take a break of 1 minute? I drink some water. So meantime you can actually throw some questions from the audience or even from the organizers, and I can try to answer them before we move to the next section. So here there is a lot of electrical engineering. So DC motor, how do you control the DC motor? How do you control the torque? How do you control actually the the power? What is the current that is needed? How do you control the position? What kind of position sensors can you use? Can you use a position sensor and control the velocity? So all those things that you do in the labs, right? So all of those techniques are very essential when you actually work with these things in the field. And in the field there is another problem, which is the ground problem. The ground, because the vehicle has a ground, but then again the vehicle is connected to the ground via the tires. So how do you take care of the ground? There is a ghosting concept, ghosting. So this ghosting, how do you deal with the ghosting? All of that is actually going to affect the reading, affect the control. Sometimes it can behave in a weird manner. What we actually programmed it to do, it might not do, it might do something differently. That is called as ghosting. म्हणजे त्याच्यामध्ये काय तर भूत शिरले का काय असं त्याचं बिहेवियर होत आहे, आणि असा आम्ही ॲक्च्युली एक्सपिरियन्स घेतलेला आहे. आणि ती टर्मिनॉलॉजी, घोस्टिंग टर्मिनॉलॉजी पण मी बघितली आहे डॉक्युमेंटेशनमध्ये. ओके, सो डिड यू हॅड एनी क्वेश्चन्स? Am I audible? I don't hear anything from anyone.
Yes, sir. You're audible.
Okay, so I'm going to show another example of SCADA. Okay, so do you know 3D printers? Maybe you all know 3D printers, and if you don't know, then anyways I will show you. But 3D printers also are like they have data acquisition and control, right? So SCADA with 3D printer, just want to show you. So I have one 3D printer that I had in Canada. I got it with me when I was coming to India. This is the most simplest form of a 3D printer. It has basically motions in 3 coordinates, so X, Y and Z. So it uses a stepper motor for that motion, and then it also has another motor to feed the filament, like the plastic actually, which is fed to the extruder. which deposits on the surface of the bed, right? So the bed is actually like, heated bed, and the extruder is also heated. So there is actually a heating element, and it also has a temperature sensor to know what is the temperature, because for different kind of printing techniques using different materials, these temperature have to be controlled. Okay, so they also have a fan to cool, and they can control the velocity of the fans to make sure that the temperature is controlled, right? So it also has a level sensor for making sure that the extruder is always running parallel to the bed when it is doing the printing job. Okay, it also has a LCD display, and so basically what it has some kind of electronics control board that is again based on Arduino. Okay, these four actually ICs that we see, these are the stepper motor drivers. You can connect the all four motors, and then you can also connect the fans, and then you can also connect, because it has some level switches, because they have the extreme positions that they cannot travel. So to know what is the extreme, they use limit switches. And then you can also connect sensor like the nozzle temperature sensor, the heated bed temperature, and then the heat for heating, you connect a heating rod for the extruder or for the nozzle, and heating for the bed. And then this is again also operated on 12 volt. Okay, the one printer that I have, it works on 12 volt, so battery powered. And the problem that I have is, I don't actually connect with the battery. I actually use a SMPS that comes from the the general purpose computers. And then when I have a power failure, then my printing actually stops, right? So again, problem, electrical engineering. Okay, now there is solution. There are printers that actually will stop, but then they can again start, or we can directly connect it to a battery, and then it can continuously keep on actually working, right? So it's not a problem. So this one has a a microprocessor that is actually like microcontroller, basically not a microprocessor. It has a microcontroller on the board which takes care of everything. Okay, so this can be loaded with a program that actually can be done using the Arduino programming terminal. So it has its own layer of program that sits inside the microcontroller that takes care of all the data acquisition and control of the motors and the sensors. Okay, and so this is the bed. So this is an aluminum kind of alloy based bed. It has a heating element underneath, and it also has a temperature sensor and a power for the heating element. And this is the extruder with the level sensor with some fan to actually control the environment in this region. It has again a heating element and a temperature sensor, right? So all of these, so this printers, they come with different actually application softwares depending on what kind of printer you are actually going to have, what make, model, whatever. So this software, which we actually call it as a slicer, the one that I am showing you is called as Repetier. Okay, it is actually from Germany, France and Germany. And so this is like a SCADA, right? So you can actually control the movement of the motor in the X, Y and Z direction. You can control the motion of the feed motor, how fast you want to feed the element. You can control the speed of the nozzle, at what speed, means at how 3D printer works, right? So it is like a ball pen. So you have a refill which is filled with ink, and then at the tip you have a ball. The ink is actually getting coated with the ink on the back side, and then when you actually push it on the paper, then it will roll the ball and the ink side will actually come front, and that's how we're writing it, right? So similarly in the 3D printer, what you have a nozzle, and the plastic is actually melting, and then it is coming out, but it is being pushed out because of the stepper motor, and that actually we can call it as a feed rate, what actually rate we are actually extruding the material. What is the flow rate, what is the flow rate of the filament, then the fan, there is a fan to cool or to control the temperature. So what should be the the speed of the fan? These are in 0 to 100%. Okay, these are in percentages. Then you have the bed temperature. What should be the bed temperature? Can I control it? What should be the extruder temperature? Can I control it? So I have a control and I also have a monitor. So this bar, the vertical bar, which is actually moving across the color, actually like kind of a vertical banner. So that actually talks about how much is the temperature and what is the current temperature. How much is the how much is the cooling fan? At what speed it is rotating? What is the set point? What is the current actually value? All of that can be controlled and monitored using the 3D printer software, and that actually works again on the same protocol, serial communication. Okay, serial communication is again the same thing which we are actually talking about, the TCP IP, the Ethernet. They also work with the serial communication only, like the basic communication protocol is actually serial. And here I want to show you in video. So in PVPIT itself, we have a 3D printer. Okay, in my facility, so I have an incubation center, personal incubation center for PVPIT. Personal in the sense means I look after that. It is actually part of PVPIT. We have different incubation centers in PVPIT. So this is one of that. These are my students. So if you saw the screen before, the screen was actually the SCADA screen, right? It was actually currently showing the current status of the 3D printer parameters. Okay, so this is the facility which we have, and many students are actually working in this facility. I personally train them, I personally actually get the work done from them, and I have actually some sponsors who are actually sponsoring for these projects. So again, SCADA, data acquisition and control. So the first example was like branded, expensive, where you want to get reliable data, because when I'm doing something in the field, I don't want to go there and spend my time and get nothing. So there I'm using reliable branded platforms. Here in this lab, it is in controlled environment, so I don't need to worry about brand. Arduino anyways is a brand still, open source brand, but still it is pretty reliable in the labs. Okay, so I can go with the cheap. So expensives are branded ones are expensive and reliable and robust. The open sources are not that expensive, but they can actually might not be robust, or like there can be some problems. So then IoT hardware. Okay, I have like around 40 minutes. So in the today's flyer that was shared by the coordinator of this event, so he actually mentioned me to talk something about ICs, microcontrollers and stuff, right? So IoT, we seen it yesterday. So what you have some kind of a sensing node, and then you have a communication node, and you also have a processing node, right? So all of that can be done using this chip called as ESP devices. Okay, Express If, it's a company, Express If. So they have series of actually ICs. So ESP8266, ESP32, these kind of devices. Again, they can be programmed using the Arduino programming environment. And maybe eventually, if you want, we can actually conduct more sessions on how to actually use this, how to program them. Right now I don't have time. So what we did is we just connect one readily available sensor, which is called as DHT11. So what it has, again, it has a tiny microprocessor, a microcontroller inside it, and it has two sensors. One is a thermistor and one is a paper based actually capacitor, and both of them actually used to sense the environment temperature and humidity in terms of relative humidity percentages. And then what they do, actually it has already a microcontroller, so it takes care of the ADC, reading the data, filtering it out, and then sharing that data in terms of some kind of coded signal, and that actually coded signal can actually be available on one of the pin, which we call it as a data pin, and that can be again decoded using a program, a function that is inbuilt in ESP devices, and then that can be again then connected to the Wi-Fi network, and then through the MQTT protocol, there is another protocol. Okay, we can send it to the cloud, and then the data which sits in the cloud, that again can be retrieved either using a web application or using actually a mobile application. So this is a very simple IoT systems. Probably students from your college might have been already working on certain projects like these ones. I don't know if in electrical department, but definitely in your ENTC and electronics department they might be working, right? So this is the simplest actually, like, you know, prototype. Second prototype, like, you know, so what we have is, now we have, instead of Wi-Fi, we want to use actually the cellular network, right? And then we also want to have, you know, the location, because this is something, a mobile device. So the GPS, the DHT, temperature and humidity readings are kind of collected using the Arduino, and then they are actually able to be transmitted to the cloud using the cellular hardware, like the modem. These are called as modems, or they can be also shared to the smartphone via Bluetooth. So on our smartphone we can have one dedicated app that can read the Bluetooth data, or there can be a web application, mobile phone application, that can be communicating with the cloud. Okay, and again here now, because we are going with the cellular network, so we go with the TCP/IP protocol. Okay, and again the cloud is accessible by the smartphone as well as by the you know, a desktop or a laptop actually system. The third system, it can be like, you know, what you have is, you have a ESP32, I just showed you, right? So ESP32, but then what you also have, you have a connectivity with the Bluetooth. So this ESP8266 was one device, ESP32 is another device. It has both Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. Okay, so it can communicate locally with the smartphone, or it can communicate over the network. Okay, so wide area network and local area network. So we can have a LAN and we can also have a WAN, right? So with this kind of a chip. Okay, so these are all actually, like, you know, based these are not from Arduino, these are ExpressIF chips. These are the most actually, like, you know, popular ones these days, very cheap ones. They're not that expensive, and reliability wise, you know, they cannot be used for commercial purpose. They can be used for education, because I've been testing them for industry and lot of challenges, you know. So for education purpose, for sure you can actually deal with this with your students, and that can be a good hands-on for them. Then another device what we build is, like, you know, so let's say we are in a region where there is no cellular connection, there is no Wi-Fi, I don't have access to internet, you know, I don't have, like, there are places, I have checked them even when I was in Canada, even in India, like, you know that you have a phone and it just doesn't have a range, no matter what, it doesn't have a range. So then I cannot call anyone, I cannot connect with the internet, nothing can happen, right? So in that case, what we can have is, we can have a Zigbee radio transmitter, and then so the same temperature sensor be connected to the Arduino, the radio transmitter can be connected to the Arduino, and then it can send data using the radio frequency to some location which we identified earlier, like we can call it as, you know, we can call it as you know, a fixed location, which also has a Zigbee receiver, radio frequency receiver. They actually work with the IEEE 802.15.4 protocol, and then that data can be read by Arduino again, and then that can be also hooked up with the GPS with its own temperature sensor, that can be connected with ESP32 or the cellular, and that can also be connected via Bluetooth to the smartphone, and that can send data to the cloud, and then that cloud data can be again retrieved back from the mobile applications or from the web applications. So this is actually also possible, we have did that as well. You know, this is something RFID, so you have a temperature sensor, moisture sensor, which is embedded in a card. The card actually can have a, you know, a card reader that can be hooked up to the ESP32 device, and then that data can be transmitted to the cloud via Wi-Fi, or it can be shared with a smartphone using Bluetooth, and then again that data can be accessible by a mobile application as well as a web application. Okay, so all of these devices for sure needs power, right? So power again is your area. Even if you're not actually understanding the different actually basics of these, doesn't matter, power is your area. And the application, you can just think about so many applications that are actually going to happen in the field of electrical engineering, you know. So there is a huge arena I would actually see right now. I'm working on 2 projects actually which are related to MSc DCL for IoT. Okay, so then so this is actually, you know, the conceptual, like, you know, the diagrams which I'm trying to show, like, you know, the conceptual diagrams. Now how to implement that, right? So I'm just showing the implementations. So implementations, right, you see, so this is actually the TCP IP based, actually, like, you know, my cellular modem, I connected to the Arduino, then I connect also with the GPS, and then I have a temperature sensor, and then I'm actually, because GPSs only work outside environments, they cannot be actually connected indoors. So I actually put it outside in my balcony, and then I'm connecting it to the laptop. Then I'm programming the microcontrollers to make sure that what it's supposed to do. Like, for example, read the data from the temperature sensor, read the location from the GPS sensor, then pack it into some, actually, like, you know, format, then transmit it to the cellular modem, and then through the cellular modem transmit it to the cloud using the TCP/IP protocol. Okay, and then make sure that the data is actually reached to the cloud and all that. So all those kind of programming, actually, things we did, and then we use 3D printers to actually, like, you know, build the enclosures in which we are going to put these prototypes. And this kind of project has been actually happening in PPPIT Budgao, which is funded by a company from Canada, my friend's company, and then we are working together on building different, actually, devices and testing it, and, you know, for education purpose. So this is actually, you know, so when we did some, you know, basic testing, okay, the programming and everything works, then we actually try to do some prototyping, right? So we put them on, you know, some kind of prototyping boards. We actually need to actually have some ideas, like, you know, fixing screws, mechanical, actually, hardware. We need to have a blade, we need to have eggs, we need to have a drilling machine to drill holes and all that. So that is all part of incubation center, which we are actually having now in PVPIT. I started from my home last year during the lockdown session. And then so there are many things which we are actually having, but for confidentiality reasons I cannot actually share much, right? So then examples of IoT cloud. So those hardware that I showed, the data that is actually sending, it can send the data to, there are two actually free cloud data storage and analytic providing, actually, companies. Those are actually, you know, those are commercial, but they're also, like, you know, free up to certain, actually, how much you want to use, you know, them. So one is from Adafruit, one is from ThinkSpeak. ThinkSpeak is part of MATLAB family, you know, MathWorks Incorporate, and these both are actually, like, you know, so the first one, it kinds of keeps on actually recording the temperature and the humidity readings, and I have actually recorded data for actually 1 year, one entire year. If I go to my account, so I have created an account, and then you know, in my account I actually hook up my hardware with some key. There is actually a key which is generated, provided by Adafruit, and then that key I have to actually program it in my hardware side, and then they actually know each other eventually, so the data can be pumped into the database on the cloud storage servers. And then also they have actually, like, you know, different kind of widgets or dashboards on which we can actually, like, you know, drag and drop some graphs, or, like, you know, indicators, or many kind of data illustrators, right? So those kind of things are possible. So here actually I have a graph. It shows, you know, the temperature readings in terms of timings, in terms of actually degrees Celsius, as well as humidity in terms of relative humidity for certain times in the day, right? So then again, you know, there is another way. So this works with MQTT protocol, okay? The other one, TCP/IP protocol, so the mobile one. So I'm sending my temperature, humidity readings, and then I'm also sending my GPS, okay, the location from where the reading is actually originating. So it will actually keep on sending that. So this is actually one of the example of the dashboard for MQTT, like, you know, for Adafruit. So here I can see how many values I actually transmitted. Okay, I can test if my hardware is working on and off. There can be some response. Okay, sometimes, you know, there is no response, and I think, like, you know, something is wrong. So what can be wrong? Number one, maybe the power, just because I didn't power my device using battery, so my power from my home actually just went off. So there is obviously no Wi-Fi, so nothing is going to work. Number two, maybe there is a problem, like, you know, because the device got overheated, so it is not able to actually, like, you know, it just got actually stuck somewhere because of the heating component. So here what I actually am sending a value. So every time it sends something to the cloud, I just check, okay, the value updating. Okay, the value is updating means actually my system is working good, and I can actually react with it or respond with it and whatever. This is for ThingSpeak again, TCP/IP, position, temperature, location, location as well. So longitude, latitude, temperature and humidity. Okay, so sometimes these events you see the latitude and longitude are coming to 0. Those are the events that actually happened. We turned off the devices, we shut down the power, or we were doing some testing and stuff, right? So those are actually simple projects. Now let me see if I can open the first video. We still have 20 minutes, okay, 20 to 25 minutes. So let me try to open this video, okay, and I'm going to share that. So excuse me for a moment because I don't know how this is going to work in terms of sharing. Let me try that. Okay, so today's session, what I want to do is I want to have some question and answers, because after this videos we are actually almost done. Okay, I can show you some more stuff eventually if you want, but mostly we are done. So maybe you can start getting ready for questions. The audience and the participants, the organizers and the participants, the audience, everyone can start actually getting ready for questions, and we can actually have some question and answers if possible. We can actually make it interacting, okay, and let me know, because we still have time, okay. I'm just going to try to show this video. Okay, right now what you see, you still see my PPT, right?
No, sir.
You don't see the PPT now, right?
Yes. No.
Okay, now shared web browser. Okay, what is this? Okay, let me just try to do something. Oh, so right now what do you see? You see a YouTube
No,
video,
sir.
right?
It's,
You see a YouTube video, right?
yes, sir.
Yes, okay. So maybe it might be a bit blur because of the data connectivity. So I'm going to play this, okay? So this is the video that illustrates live what we did. Okay, let me actually see if I can increase the the resolution, quality. Okay, let me go to 240. Just bear some time with me. Okay, it's still not that clear. Let me just change the quality to 480, 360. Okay, so it's the same thing. I'm just showing everything here. Okay, I'm going to start the video again, and
I am intern student working on this project with Smartphone Safe Solution Incorporate Canada. In this project, we want to show how our second prototype on IoT enabled temperature and humidity transmitter based on Wi-Fi as well as Zigbee radio frequency module works. In this project, we have Wi-Fi enabled microcontroller interfaced with a Zigbee radio frequency called a coordinator. In addition to it, we have two Zigbee radio frequency based on router modules interfaced with two separate microcontrollers that are kept at two different locations within indoor facility. Two separate temperature and humidity sensors are interfaced with both routers, and everything is programmed in a such a way that the temperature and moisture data continuously transmitted from one node to other router to the coordinator, and coordinator data passes it on to the Wi-Fi device within again transmit it to the cloud data server to store and to display the reading in timely manner. Now let's watch the two separate routers. They are placed in our building facility, and let's also watch where coordinator is placed and how the data looks like on the cloud side. Let's watch.
So here is our router 1, which has the DHT11 temperature humidity sensor, which is interfaced with a microcontroller based Arduino. So the temperature humidity information is collected using the Arduino board, which is then again transmitted using the serial communication to the ZigBee radio frequency module, which is again transferring the data in the wireless fashion, and that data is acquired by the coordinator. So let's go watch the second router. So this is the second router. Again, same configuration. Arduino, the DHT22 sensor, and the ZigBee with the Explorer module. Both routers are actually powered using the power receptacle. They can also be powered using 9-volt batteries, and eventually we are planning to place these in some environmental conditions where the temperatures will be below freezing or even near to freezing temperatures. So the R1, R2 both are constantly recording the data on temperature and humidity, and then that data is collected in a wireless fashion by our coordinator module, okay, which also has a Wi-Fi capability that gets transmitted to the cloud. So this is actually the Arduino, the programming module, the programming screen, the interface. So in this we have programmed the routers as well as the coordinators, and this is actually the terminal. Here in this terminal what we see is so every almost 30 seconds both the data coming from both routers in terms of humidity and temperature. Each router has an ID, something $R1, $R2. If we have another router in future, we can have $R3. So then those will actually have the IDs $R2, R1, R3 onwards. The humidity and the temperatures for those IDs are actually shown here. And then these IDs and for those temperatures, the data gets transmitted to the cloud. For temporary reason, we are using ioadafruit.com. In that, we have the temperature humidity graph for R1 as well as for R2. And we have a counter which shows how many values have been transmitted. We can also see, the actual readings in terms of numbers. So the graphs, the numbers, in the time series, which can be downloaded, and they can also be processed further using different technologies such as AI, ML, and deep learning. So this completes the second prototype, the second and the third, which is a combination of Wi-Fi and ZigBee radio frequency modules. And here is the video illustrating and demonstrating the work. I would also like.
Okay, so I can stop this. So was it clear? So the one that I tried to show you, in terms of PPT, I actually tried to record that and showed you as a live, right? So it was as good as a live, just not trying to, because many people just do it in theory, but they never implemented it. But me, I'm a person, I like to implement. And what we see in theory, instead of seeing in theory, I like to do practical. and I do it myself, and then I also take help from students, and I help students and I make them learn and stuff. So that's what I do. That's why I'm actually the R&D cell in charge for PPPIT, and that's what I've been doing there for the last 3 years now. I will finish maybe 3 years in 1 more month. And I'm an alumni of PPPIT. I live very close, like 4 kilometers, just like near PPPIT Gurgaon. And let me just show you something more. So what I can show you, so I wanted to show you, so yeah, so I wanted to show you, so you can type my name, Nandakishore Dhawre. So my browser is still visible, right? My browser is
Yes,
visible,
sir.
right? So you type my name, Nandakishore Dhawre, then you can find this link for Google Scholar. Okay, so on Google Scholar, you can see that actually I have so many publications, and I have actually authors from Canada, from Australia, from China, from Bangladesh, from China, from Malaysia, from France, from Switzerland, some from India. And I'm an expert in instrumentation, integrated and automated systems, soil spectroscopy. I'm actually expert in spectroscopic instruments and special data clustering analysis, and many areas. Like I don't know how to actually put things on my CV these days. So what I have is I have a homepage. Okay, so anyone wants to learn more about me, I have my homepage, personal Google site homepage. On that there are many things, so including I have some videos, so the work that I do in terms of technical, or in terms of software development, in terms of hardware development, in terms of presentation, in terms of hobbies, entertainment, so I'm also in entertainment. I compose songs, I try to organize events like fashion show events, I do deliver talks, I develop softwares, develop hardware systems, and I also file patents. I just don't have one patent, but I have many patents so far. And then what I also do is I try to help people who are interested to go to Canada for higher studies or for immigration. So I have this page on which you can actually visit just by typing my name. My last name has a W, not V, in Dhawre. Okay, and my name is Nandakishore, not Nandakumar. So Nandakishore Dhawre. You type my name and you'll find a lot of resources about myself. So those who want to go to Canada, all information, and I actually do consultancy in that. You can actually discuss this with your students. And then I have actually many partners from Canada with whom I actually do some work. We have a company called ProIn 4.0 International Consultancy Services. I have a company called DRNM, DNKS International Consultancy Services, and we have a big network. And what I wanted to show you is something related to IoT that I did in 2010. Okay, I was working in some industry, and in terms of that industry, let me just show you very quickly. Okay, so the PPT which is on the web, actually I'm trying to open that. So can you see a PDF now?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay, so let me see if I can make it big. Okay, perfect. So this is actually a company in Canada. So I actually did some presentation when I was in McGill in 2011. So this presentation is from long back, more than 10 years ago, and it was related to rail friction management. Okay, now you see this box here. This is actually a lubricator. On the front end it has a lot of electronics and control, and inside that box what it is filled with some kind of a biodegradable fluid, which is used to lubricate the rail and the wheel of the train, so that the friction can be minimized and the fuel efficiency can be actually increased, as well as the wear and tear of the wheel and the rail can be actually managed. Okay, and that was actually a project that was in Canada, and I was actually working on that, on developing different actually hardware software solutions, as well as installing, testing, and everything was connected to the cloud. This was in 2009. That time I didn't even know IoT. I don't want to lie, but frankly speaking, I didn't know IoT, but I was working on IoT. I didn't know the term IoT. Okay, that time I was also doing my masters. I did my masters in multidisciplinary areas. Wherever there is a need of a sensor instrumentation, I'm there. Okay, doesn't matter. Environment, okay, I'm there. Agriculture, okay, I'm there. Rail industry, okay, I'm there. Aerospace industry, okay, I'm there. Automobile industry, okay, I'm there. Manufacturing industry, okay, I'm there. Food industry, okay, I'm there. Education industry, I'm still there, right? So everywhere I'm actually trying to actually make my presence, because instrumentation has a very versatile actually applications everywhere. We need to do a measurement before developing anything. If we actually have a wrong measurement, then the output will also be wrong, right? So this is a lubricator, which is actually like a lubricating device which is installed across the rail network, every 1 to 2 kilometers apart. What it does, it senses the train. When the wheel is passing, it will pump the lubricating fluid, and that wheel will actually paint the rail. Means ते थोडक्यात पेंटिंगचं काम करते. लुब्रिकंटचा पेंट चा कोट रेलच्या रुळावरती स्प्रेड करायचा, ज्याच्यामुळं रेलचं फ्रिक्शन मॅनेज होणार, रेलचं जे चाक आहे त्याचं वेअर अँड टेअर कमी होणार, रुळाचं जे ऍक्च्युअली वेअर अँड टेअर आहे ते कमी होणार, प्लस फ्युएलची एफिशियन्सी चांगली राहणार. Okay, this was a big project, mega big project. Actually, I worked with that, so the outline of my talk will be like introduction to rail friction, available lubrication, CP West, field work, safety, journey between Calgary and Vancouver, just like so for some fun. So rail friction, rolling wheel and top of the rail, wheel, flange, rail, side, gauge. Okay, so this is actually the rail and this is the wheel, and it actually rolls on the top of the the rail side gauge, but on the side, so it is like a L shape with some angle, and that is actually where the friction is actually happening. That is where the wear and tear is happening. Okay, so the gauge face and the top face, that is where actually the friction is happening. Okay, so I don't want to go into much detail. So this is actually example of a lubricator which has some kind of a manifold that is mounted near the track, and that device, what it does, when it actually senses the wheel, it will start pumping the fluid, and then the wheel will keep on actually dragging it throughout its distance, and actually after some time you need a repeater. Now the problem is, these devices are connected at remote locations across the rail network, like which can be like more than 1,000-2,000 kilometers, and they need power. If they don't have power, then we have renewable energy sources like solar powers, solar panels, or we can also have like wind, small wind turbines, mini wind turbines, and it has a battery, so that can be charged continuously in the day, and in the day night that battery can be used to power the lubricating pumping mechanism, as well as the control electronics and data acquisition system. And all of these actually boxes has a network of wireless network. Okay, it is connected to the cellular network, it is connected to the satellite network, it is connected to the Wi-Fi network, and it is connected to the internet in general, and all that information is actually collected at one center by CP Rail. Because all these lubricators, what they need to know, are they working, is it having the fluid, because that fluid has to be refilled. So refilling is a job, it's a big job. So if the tanks are not refilled on time, then the lubrication is not going to happen. And all of these are geo-referenced, so there is a need of a GPS, and there are many times situations where there is no internet connectivity. Then in that case, what do we need? We need that that wireless, actually the one that I actually showed you before or told you before. So this is actually a live thing that I did. I worked on this project called as a CP Rail West, so Canadian Pacific Rail. So it's like India मध्ये जसं काश्मीर घाटी एरिया आहे, तिकडचा सगळा अरुणाचल प्रदेश, उत्तरांचल, शिमला, काश्मीर, किंवा इवन ॲक्च्युली आपल्या इकडचे जे ॲक्च्युली कोकण रेल्वेचे जे सगळे घाटी एरिया असतील तर तिथे खूप सारे असं वर खाली ट्रेन आहे. सो त्या एरियामध्ये सगळ्यात जास्त ह्याची गरज आहे. So that was, and then there are a lot of grizzly bears. So grizzly bear is actually a particularity of kind of Western Canada, from Canada and also in the US. And the trains actually, they go through jungles, they go through actually big forests, dense forests, and grizzly bears are there, and we have to work with them. So many times they can attack us, and I have actually had an experience. So we actually have this bear actually sprays, we spray which is made of chutney, masala vagare. So you just spray it on their face and then they will run away, and then you also run away. You just get into that truck, which is actually high rail truck, right? So these are specialized trucks or jeeps or pickup trucks that actually can go on the rail, and we have to enter the rail, and then we have to go and actually go to that location, and we have to communicate with the rail system, because if there is a train coming, upcoming train or downcoming train, we don't want to get caught in between them, or we don't even want to change their schedule. So all of that needs to be taken care of, and all of that I have actually did a lot of work in that. So this is actually Canada. Canada is a big country, neighbor US. It's spread across more than 5,000 kilometers from east to west, and in that British Columbia and Alberta, these are the two states which have big cities called as Vancouver and Calgary. So between these two states I've actually worked on this rail project back 2009 or 2010. Okay, and this was this was kind of an internship for me too. So I was working as an intern for 2 months, and then I continued as a as a full-time employee until I joined actually Honeywell Aerospace. Okay, so after this I joined Honeywell Aerospace. Having an experience in rail industry helped me to get into the aerospace industry, but then I wanted to again I wanted to pursue PhD, and I wanted to get into academics. So I got into McGill. McGill was actually the super top institute in that time across the globe. Right now even it has a very high ranking, and so that's all about IoT, SCADA, and I have lots of hands-on in terms of education, in terms of experience, and that's why I was able to probably share many things with you. Probably you can reshare many things with your students, and that's how we can progress. We can make progress with ourselves as well as for our nation. And if there were many things which actually didn't go into your head because of the disciplinary which is actually cross, don't worry so much. Just think about the application. Just think about what could be your role in that. There might be some role, because everything is a systems engineer these days. Like you take a cell phone example. A cell phone example has a battery, it has a power management. Okay, whose role is that? That is the role of chemical or electrical engineers. It has actually a microprocessor, microcontroller. So that, whose role? Electronics engineers. It has a lot of sensors. Whose role? Instrumentation engineers. It has an enclosure, body. Okay, whose role? Mechanical engineers. Then it has software application, whose role? IT and computer science engineers. And then there is a lot of manufacturing engineering involved. So it is a multidisciplinary branch, from making a cell phone or to make actually a big satellite or launching rockets that are done by ISRO. All of these are part of systems engineering. You need civil engineers, you need mechanical engineers. Yes.
So there is a time limit for up to 11:30. We will start our next session.
Yes, so I'm done. So I stopped sharing, and I'm actually done, and I just want to share some things again. So if 1 minute and I'm done. Okay, so again I would like to acknowledge my thanks to PPIT Budgao, principal, trustee and chairman. I would like to acknowledge the students who did work, Kiran, Rohan, Nitesh, Ankit, professors from electrical and some IT departments, Sneha Patil and Varsha Patil Desai. Then companies like Smart Food Canada, Fine Circuit Sangli, Provin ICS Pune, Apollo Tyres Private Limited India, institutes like McGill University, and also Kasturba Walchand College in Sangli. And again I would like to thank AICTE, Department of Electrical Engineering, KIT, and all organizers and participants from your management administration office, teaching, non-teaching and students. I would like to really thanks the coordinator of this event, and thanks the HOD Mrs. Kulkarni ma'am for organizing this session and for giving me a chance to share my skills and expertise with you. And again, my same saying is, like, don't forget that we belong from the soils of this nation, and we should actually also focus on meditation. Okay, so that's it. I think I can leave and you can continue with your next session.